Before we get started with today's video, I'd just like to say that I lent out my microphone thinking that I didn't have any videos planned for this week, only for me to realise that I mixed up the dates with this Ghostbusters video. So this video I don't have a microphone, but I should be back for the next one. Ghostbusters is a huge part of pop culture and has been for many years, and it has been so for my whole lifetime. I grew up watching the first one a lot, so I was looking forward to covering all these films once more, now that they have released a new film in the franchise titled Ghostbusters Afterlife. So as we do on this channel, we're going to rank all the Ghostbusters movies from worst to best, now that we have this new release. Easily coming in at last place is Ghostbusters 2016. I think most people will agree with me, but a lot of the critics I watched don't find this film nearly as bad as I do. Before its release, it was really obvious that this was a clear cash grab, as it reboots a film from the 80s which still holds up to this day, meaning it didn't really need a reboot. Obviously the advances of technology and CGI since 1984 are a lot better, therefore you'd have better special effects in this film, but that's just about the only good thing and superior thing over the original. Everything else really falls flat. It tries to capture a more quirky and comedy-based story, however it just feels way too over the top, as given that is what these actors do in the other movies, and it's so over the top that every time they're on screen they're just constantly irritating, and I pretty much dreaded every scene which had them in it. This film doesn't cover how they became the Ghostbusters as well. It kind of puts the comedy in the center stage, and while if the comedy was good, maybe I could forgive it, but the comedy is painful to sit through, and with that it moves too quickly through everything, making you not really invested. This is clearly a reboot and not just a film continuation from the previous films, as they have no prior knowledge to ghosts, and the actors return from the original but in different roles and things like that. Even though it is a reboot, it can't help but rely on that original to make it what it is. It can't stand on its own, and like with bringing those actors back as well as many other things, it really forces in Easter eggs which don't really give any satisfaction. This film is disgraceful standing next to the original and contains some horrific writing which just makes the whole duration painful to sit through. Narrowly coming in at third place is Ghostbusters 2. What prevents this film from reaching the same heights as the original is the choice of plot. The plot they go for makes it feel like they're 6 movies deep into the main franchise, and I'm beginning to run out of ideas, but I just feel like there are many other ideas they could have gone with before going with this one. The main character's chemistry is still intact from the first one, and it actually benefits from giving side characters more screen time. And what I like about this group dynamic this time around compared to the first one is they're more in a group than they were in the previous one, instead of just continuously being separated and following their own arcs by themselves. You can really buy them as good friends thanks to their chemistry and charisma, and it really does make this film a much more enjoyable experience. And while this plot does have issues and it doesn't match the same energy as the first one, the Ghostbusters themselves still provide a lot of fun, which if it was just a starting off film with new characters, I wouldn't be able to praise this one nearly as much. Narrowly coming in at second place is Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is a fun return to form following on from that female remake in 2016. And while it is in a very different environment and contains new characters for the most part, the main film still has a large impact on this one. Not in a bad way, as it pays its homage to that film and its characters by continuing on the legacy and in some areas adding to it. And with paying homage, it did allow for some really emotional moments, probably the most emotional moments we've seen in this entire franchise. And whilst that was perhaps the strongest part of the film when it did happen, to be honest, this movie did feel tonally inconsistent throughout its whole duration. You'd have a very emotional moment, which I won't talk about for spoiler reasons, and then at other points you'd have really underwhelming humour at times, so it was a really awkward balance between a more dark and serious Ghostbusters film with awkward quirkiness mixed in with it. This film does provide some really good fan service, and I've seen complaints saying they overdo it, and I don't think that's the case. However, with certain ways of giving their fan service, if you think about it, it doesn't really make too much sense, so you're relying on that fan service to cover up the holes it's left in between. But once again, I can kind of look past that given the awesomeness that it does deliver. Despite big name actors like Finn Wolfhard and my favourite actor Paul Rudd, McKenna Grace is the real standout here, being the strongest performer who brings that nostalgic, nerdy vibe that Harold Ramis did bring to Egon Spengler from the original 2 movies. There are many things that Ghostbusters fans would love about Ghostbusters Afterlife, from a strong continuation of the story and some great callbacks. However, despite the film's 2-hour runtime, I was quite unsatisfied with the ending. Not about the decisions in the story, but the way it ends. With films, you have the big climactic battle and then you have like a scene or two after that showing what life is like after those events, but this film abruptly ends after the climactic battle, and once you watch it you'll kind of understand why, but at the same time the ending wasn't completely satisfying in my opinion. But easily coming in at first place is Ghostbusters 1984. Wow, it'd been many years since I rewatched this, probably about 7, and it was a great trip down memory lane. Albeit, as you'd expect, the special effects weren't nearly as good as I remember, but that's not a criticism, as those were probably the best effects you got at that time. Maybe besides that CGI, however, it is quite iconic to this day. The style it presents the ghosts in many aspects do hold up, and it's understandable why it is still so popular to this day, because it's just as enjoyable. I don't think they'd be able to do as good a job if they were to make it for the first time in 2021. Everything moves at a quick and enjoyable pace. It never slows down, and it never has any moments that will disengage the viewer. It's constantly moving, and that is mainly thanks to the cast's fantastic chemistry, and the dialogue they use is so clever and points with the humour, with how these characters feel so real and they feel like a good friend group. Ghostbusters fans may complain that my rating may be low. However, on rewatch, I know it's like part of the fun, but if I have to be a critic, I can't just look away from certain aspects for sake of nostalgia. But there were quite a few holes that this film does jump over in favour of getting to where it wants to be, and once again I can understand that, but when it does that I do have to knock a few ratings back. This film does hold up with some fantastic performances and just overall a really fun time, which I had a great time rewatching. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, sorry about the microphone issue, it will be fixed. But anyways, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more franchise rankings, this is pretty much what my channel does, as well as rankings of TV series seasons. But I'll leave a clickable card up in the corner for that. Let me know what your ranking is down below, and I hope to see you in my next video.